Hello, and welcome to another Scoutcast brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by the ever lovely Seb. How is it going, Seb?
Other lovely Seb. How many lovely Sebs do you know?
Ever
Ever, do you
lovely.
say ever?
Yeah.
Oh, my hearing's gone as well. I'm good, thank you, my friend. I was focusing on when you started. Like your like brought was the most West Country I've heard you.
Oh, it's because
It was lovely.
I was caught between brought and bought. So I was
Oh,
like, the
nice.
bort. But
Nice.
anyway, but yeah, you've been good, mate? All right?
I'm okay, thank you, man. I'm a little bit ill, so yeah, if I make less sense than usual, that's the excuse I'll go with. But otherwise, I'm cheerful enough. Thank you very much. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm sure you make lots of sense as usual. Rich, we're also joined by you tonight. How is it going?
Yeah, good. It's been a fun game week actually. I know it's been quite low scoring. I think there's been a lot of talking points, and
But
because everyone's got their, people like to roll in game week one, as
I
the FPL textbook says.
It
There's
does.
more decisions.
Not all of us did though, did we, Rich?
Well, no, no.
No. But I reckon you say it's been a fun game week. I think after game week one, I think a lot of people were like, yeah, lovely, like this. This is what I want to be with FPL. And then game week two rolls around. I reckon we would have lost about 1 million users this week. I reckon there's a
Probably.
lot of people out there with 20, 30 points. Yeah, not so good this week.
But that's how the game normally is. I think we were spoiled
Exactly.
last week.
And it was a low scoring week for everybody, wasn't it? So if you're getting around 35 points, you're actually around about average anyway, aren't you? Which is absolutely fine. Now, on that lovely cheery note, let's talk a little bit about what we're actually going to be talking about today. So we've got quite a few things to talk about today because now we have 2 weeks worth of data. We're starting to get into a bigger sample size. Stop giving us looks, Rich. We're going to look at our points, how we got on this week so far. Obviously, this week hasn't finished yet. We've got Arsenal Crystal Palace happening as we are talking. It's currently 32 minutes in. It's 0-0 at the moment. We're going to be looking at the overachievers and the underachievers. We're going to be looking at Bruno and Rashford and Man United in particular because they have one nice fixture coming up and it's talking about whether we should really be keeping those players based on their start so far. Going to be looking at Ollie Watkins. Seb was very excited as soon as it was confirmed he was off penalties and whether that means he's still good value in this game. He's still an 8 mil striker. He's now off penalties. Does that mean he's a better asset, a worse asset, or just the same asset as he was before? So that's going to be an interesting chat. Then we're going to be looking at our bus teams going into game week 3. Going to be looking at the community team because they're just doing well. They're doing okay. They've got a few mounting problems, though, I would say. So that's going to be interesting seeing how they're getting on. Better than the person that's organising the community team who left Mbeumo on his bench this week. So sorry, Matt, rank chaser. That was I had to mention that. Not so nice. He's not been very as chatty this week. And then we got a bit of a Q&A to finish off with. I say that we've also got our over and unders, which I'll be talking about too. So let's start straight away then with our points so far this week. So my point so far this week hasn't been an amazing week, but it is what it is at the moment. I think I'm on 32 with triple Arsenal still to play. Turner in goal. What I tell you what, I'm so happy with this rotation. Turner in goal, Pickford on my bench. What did I do? I picked the right keeper, didn't I? Turner got 2, Pickford got 0. Chillwell with 1. Didn't see 3-1 West Ham coming, but there you go. Chillwell was taken off at 60 minutes as well, which is interesting. We might talk about that in a minute. Saliba at the back, who's playing now. Estupiñán with 11 points. Martinelli, who's playing now. Rashford with 2. Matoma with 12. Estupiñán and Matoma assisted each other, which was lovely. Saka, who's playing now. Bruno Fernandes with 1 point. Very disappointing there. Haaland captain with 4. And then Pedro, who didn't start and came on and got booked with 0 points there. But Colwell with 1. Shaw with 1. Osula with 2. I've got most of it round the right way, so it's not too bad. 32 points with triple Arsenal to play. It's quite a competitive game so far, I would say. So we'll see what happens there.
Do you regret not playing Asula then?
No.
Okay.
And you asked me this. You were like, would you play Osula? I was like, no, I would not play Osula. Never know. Next week, if I bench boost, maybe I will. But yeah, so I think I'm at roughly 1.4 million at the moment. So it's a red arrow, but I mean, it's all relevant at the moment. Obviously, Salah was the big miss that I didn't have this week, but he didn't really punish us massively because he missed the pen and then scored the pen. So yeah, not too bad. Rich, moving on to your team, just talk us through your team. Obviously, you didn't have a Matoma. You had someone else beginning with an M and ending with a vowel.
I had the other one.
Yeah.
So I'm on 39 points before the Arsenal game. I've got Martinelli and Saka playing at the moment. No Arsenal defender. I'm sure we'll talk about those in a minute. But yes, so I had Turner in goal, Robertson, Chilwell, and Estupiñán in defence. My midfield, Bruno, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli, and Mbeumo instead of your Matoma. Haaland captain, and then Pedro. I ended up bringing in Robertson for James because I had 1 million in the bank. I was quite confident Lewis would start, and then I looked at all the predictors, and I think I saw one person that predicted Rico Lewis to start. So I thought, I need to sort this out. I did not fancy Shaw at all away at Spurs. So I went for Robertson. He's my Trippier replacement, as in, or placeholder, shall I say? Not Trippier replacement. He's my Trippier placeholder. And I couldn't really resist that game at home to Bournemouth. And I mean, he was taking corners. Some Liverpool fans aren't over the moon that he's still taking corners, and he almost got an assist. So yeah.
So you did that as a quickly get him in, and then it'll be Trippier in a couple of weeks.
It'll be Trippier in a couple of weeks. He will play once, possibly twice more, but more likely the original plan was he was going to play once.
Yeah.
And I just thought there's so many players there's a handful of players who could genuinely, get 15 points plus.
Yeah.
And I really thought he was, one of them this game week.
Fair enough.
So I was in a bit of a weird position where I suppose because I got Lewis, I needed, to upgrade James to someone. There weren't that many defenders screaming out to me, to be honest.
Yeah. I obviously asked you, no, you asked me last week, did I regret the Colwill move? Do you regret the Rico Lewis move a little bit now? Like, obviously you've got players like Akanji or Gavardio. Do you feel like that could have been another City player? Are you still quite happy with it?
I'm still pretty happy with it. I mean, I don't know if he's going to stick around that long, but he gained me a point over Saliba last week.
Yeah.
And then bringing in Robertson this week, it's gained me a point over Shaw. So it's like marginal gains. If I can do this every week, I'll be 38 points better off at the end of the season. It's very, very marginal. And obviously there's been a domino effect, but I quite like it. I think Lewis has huge upside as, a bench defender. As in he could become a lot more important for his price.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like someone like Kabore, or if I've gone for Bulldog or something like that, they kind of just are what they are. It's like having Archer or something.
Yeah. Who could be good eventually.
Could be.
Yeah. Seb, moving on to your points. So we're talking about could be good. Let's look at Seb's points here. Talk us through your points, Seb.
I don't know how to take that, but okay. I think I'm on, was it 41 before the Arsenal match kicked off? 43 now, which is only 2 because Gabriel obviously is benched. So I think, to be fair, I was quite confident, or obviously theorised that there's a reason Gabriel is benched in the first match, and it could well continue. Zinchenko's on the bench tonight, the inverting thing, blah, blah, blah. But I also had James, so I couldn't actually follow my own conviction. I chose to get rid of James and keep Gabriel because at least I knew James was definitely out. So the team was Ederson in goal with 6 points.
Yeah, big win for you, that one.
Chilwell with 1, Gabriel with 0 as it stands, and at best that's probably 1, which is what Gusto, who off my bench, would get, who was my transfer for James. Estupiñán with 11 as per everyone. Rashford and Bruno with not very many points. Saka playing now with Havertz as well. And Mbeumo 16, which is very pleasing. I mean, 2 penalties in 2 weeks. Obviously not going to keep that up, but nice to have. The reason you get him is minutes and penalties. So nice to have all of those up front just as a nice piece of confirmation. But we would expect a little Baron run potentially. Haaland captain, which many people with that Salah didn't really come to much. Although, had some decent numbers. So nothing to be too scared about, I don't think. João Pedro with 0, similar as well to one or two of us here. I think he's averaged 60 minutes-ish so far. Was it like 88 in the first week, 33 off the top of my head this week, so like 60 and a half each week.
About right.
I was saying I think it was a couple of weeks ago that I thought maybe his X-Men were a bit low at about 40 or so. I put them at 60, made him a much better option. So that call looks okay so far. 2 weeks in, right? Game week 3 will count for an awful lot, I think, there, especially if many people are going to transfer him out. But while frustrating to have 0 here, I have to be reasonable and say, well, that's basically what I predicted, right? So I have to not be too unhappy about that. Would have been nice to get lucky, but it would have been lucky, I guess. And then the benches just turn out. Obviously, chose to play Ederson there, which is nice. Gusto, as mentioned, and Baldock and Mbeumo. So pretty thin on the bench, to be fair. Yeah, you look like you got a question. Go, please.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask. I've got two questions, just really quickly. Although you'll probably mention
Yeah.
this again later.
First question,
on
why? And
when
second,
we go to your best team. Just really quickly. Obviously, Gabriel. You thought it was going to be an issue anyway, and it's turned out that it's looking like it's going to be an issue. Or it looks a little bit like maybe he's being reprimanded that his head's been turned to the Saudi League and maybe getting a big, lot of money basically. What's your plans with him? Are you going to be moving him to who? Or are you going to be moving him?
Sure. So, I mean, my conjecture on Gabriel was that it's tactical. Hey, maybe we'll find out it's not, and it is Saudi, or maybe it's both. Maybe we'll never get confirmation. But my conjecture on that was without Zinchenko, Partey has to invert from the right, which means there's no room for Gabriel because Arteta doesn't want him centre back. Without going into all the details, there's a thing on Twitter. Go have a look, or actually listen to the Pot Shots podcast. They explained it better than I could. They're Arsenal fans. They analyse the tactics. But basically, in this system, there isn't a spot for Gabriel as it stands. Is the theory, but I do still have in my team because I also had James, and so I thought, well, what's more likely that James plays or Gabriel plays? Well, James is injured, so it's more likely I'm wrong and Gabriel plays. So I kept Gabriel, did James to Gusto. I did start Gabriel over Gusto because I thought if they both start, who do I back to potentially keep the clean sheet more likely? And I thought that would be Gabriel. Obviously knowing that if Gabriel doesn't play, hopefully there's a good chance of him not getting any minutes. He did last week, but maybe that was to shore up the defence. Hopefully this week he doesn't come on and I would get Gusto. Although Gusto's on 1, so it doesn't really matter, does it? At best, I'm getting 1 point out of this situation, probably. So fine. Next week, which I think was the part of your question, that probably is my transfer, which is a bit of a shame because I have same as everyone else, right? I have João Pedro question, which ideally I'd keep in one more week, sorry. But I'm then benching like one of João Pedro or Gusto or Gabriel. I guess it would have been cool to lose Gabriel, bench Gusto, maybe say do Pedro to Jackson or something like that. That might have been the sexy move, but I'm probably doing something a bit more boring in defence and playing Pedro, which could be fine.
Yeah, and Gusto, I was really surprised you went with Gusto because it
Really?
seems like quite a short-term move.
Oh yeah.
Is your idea just to keep him on the bench and he's 4 mil and it doesn't matter? Because obviously,
I mean, I'm not the one with Rico Lewis, mate.
It looks different.
Whoa.
It looks.
Look at Seb's bench.
Yeah, I know.
But how many minutes did your boy get this week?
This is what I'm wondering because obviously before the West Ham game, everybody was like triple Chelsea, and actually people are still saying that because the fixtures are obviously still there.
Yeah.
But do you feel like that's just a move that's going to have to happen halfway through that fixture run, or like, are you just feel happy about it at the moment? So
I started with Chillwell and James, and then with 1.5 in the bank, which would have done João Pedro to Jackson or a number of other moves as well. For example, I liked Trippier in a couple of weeks. With James being injured, I felt pretty confident that Gusto would come in for him because he came off the bench for him when James was rested at the end of that match. Played in pre-season. He's the right back who's been signed to deputise for James. So, while of course there's a chance it didn't happen, I felt pretty happy that it probably would. So that was easy in terms of if I still want Chelsea's right back, I know who that is and I can get him 4.0, which is super cheap. Very happy with that. The only real thing, I guess, is it eats up a Chelsea spot. But for the time I want them, that would be Chilwell, Gusto, and Jackson anyway. And if James came back and I got confirmation, I could reverse that move. That bit then being the main issue, right? So if James, and I think I mentioned this as well when I was talking to people about it, the main issue is that if James wasn't out for like months and months, but just a few weeks, you're probably going to have a week where you're like, oh, I have Gusto, but I don't know if James is fit to start. And so you could end up with like a reverse minutes problem to what you would have when you were originally selling James. So that definitely could be an issue for me. But when I was looking at the squad and what it would look like in a few weeks' time, I would probably have an open bench spot, as in I would have 12 players I wanted to play. Yeah. So if I do have any concerns there, I'm happy enough to bench him and not get like, 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah, maybe I missed a Chelsea spot, but having 3 mil in the bank to mess around with the team, still maintaining the option of going Chelsea in the meantime, was attractive enough to me. The only other real option I think was probably City, another City defender, which, hey, I probably should have done, right? If I'd gone DS, I think I'd be 7 points up. But I've got Edison, so I was comfortable enough with that. And I guess the only other interesting thing out of that, which you alluded to when you were talking about Chilwell, is that Chilwell did indeed, again, start at this left wing in one phase, left wing back in another phase, back three to back. So building up in the back three, pushing Chilwell on, obviously pushing Gusto on, but then defending in a back four where Colwell's the left back. And watching the match, actually, I don't think I did watch the Chelsea match the first time when we talked about this, when that shape was identified. And, we looked at the analysis of it as well. But watching the match this time, Colwell really was just taking up left back spots at times. Really traditional, just overlapping, putting in the ball from wide. Nothing too special. But at least for me, that confirms that in certain phases, he's playing left back, not left centre back, because you wouldn't see your left centre back do that, probably.
Yeah.
So if Chilwell is left wing, or at least sometimes, if that's the option, what a brilliant, fantastic option. Apart from the fact that he was subbed, was it just bang on 60 minutes?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That is, I don't want to overblow it. It's not a silly concern. But if the speculation, like we speculated, that if he's playing at left wing, it's a tactical shift, 4 at the back, that's great for Chilwell, etc., etc. But if that now opens him up to being considered by Poch as part of that, say, front 4, and if Poch wants to move the team around during the match itself, for example, bringing Mudryk on, he brought Mudryk on, I think, for Chukwuemeka, was it? So Mudryk either went 10 or right. So sorry, I can't remember which one that was. But I paid attention when he moved left, and you would think, well, that means Chilwell can drop back to left back. But what actually happened is Colwell stayed on and Chilwell came off. If Chilwell was your left back or left wing back, obviously he wouldn't be part of that substitution, part of that tactical rotation. So I guess a small concern that while his attacking potential is up significantly, probably from left wing, his minutes are probably down a little bit, because we know that managers are much more likely to mess around with those front players rather than the back, especially if Colwell is doing a good enough job to maintain that shape and Poch just wants to shake around what's going on up front.
Yeah, and I think it was a little bit of a shock for people, them obviously losing 3-1 to West Ham. And I think a lot of people have maybe shaken a little bit in their resolve to get these Chelsea players in. The big thing as well, I suppose it should be said before we move on to the over and unders, is the fact that Enzo did take the penalty, which was quite big, but then missed the penalty. So we still have no idea whether Reece James is on them primarily.
So I think, obviously Reece James wasn't playing, right? So if you do have conviction that Reece James is taking them, then you shouldn't be shaken in that. But I think the chances might have been more in Enzo's favour anyway. And I would argue that while him missing it is a small dent to him taking the next one, him taking it in the first place is a much bigger boost, because we have confirmation that he was, with the players on the pitch, first choice. It seems unlikely, unless James was first choice, which I don't think he was, it seems unlikely that missing one would completely shatter Poch's confidence in him. And it wasn't a terrible penalty, was it? It was more one of those, keeper guessed the right way, he failed to sell him, rather than just a terrible penalty. So I think he gets at least one more shot. So I would put his, whatever we call it, expected points, I would put them up based on that, not down. But maybe not as up as much as if he'd scored. That wasn't a good sentence.
No, it's fine. By the way, we've got over 200 people watching. Thank you for watching during the game. It is half-time now, still 0-0. Make sure you like the stream for us as well. Thank you so much. Right, moving on to the overperformers on the first 2 weeks. So this is based on 2 weeks worth of data now. So game week 1 and game week 2. Obviously, the Arsenal Crystal Palace boys might not feature on these tables if you expect them to, because obviously they're still playing at the moment. So Ward-Prowse came in and got 2 assists on his debut for West Ham. I think they were both corners, weren't they? Obviously did very well. He's obviously on a lot of set pieces there already, but there is an over performance there. Aurier there for Nottingham Forest. Then there's a Stupinan, March, so both Brighton boys there. Rodri and Ciso and Matoma are both there as well. Isak, Julian Alvarez from Man City, and Awoniyi. I can never say his name. Awoniyi. There you go. From Nottingham Forest, who's done incredibly well recently. I think he's on 8 goals in his last 6 appearances or something like that. Rich, if I start off with you, Ward-Prowse, 6 million. I'm surprised he came in at 6 mil, actually. I thought he'd be 6.5, but 6 million. West Ham on pretty much all the set pieces, already got 2 assists. I mean, we should be downgrading Bruno and going to Ward-Prowse, shouldn't we?
Probably not based on this. Although I suppose with him, with the set pieces, I guess they're always going to be lower XA chances. What I'll be intrigued about is if he's on penalties or if it's still Benrahma, because I remember looking into it last season when I bought Ward-Prowse, and the Southampton players, Southampton fans seemed to think he was really bad at penalties. As in, I think he was quite high up in the hierarchy of the club, and obviously he's great at free kicks, but they were actually joking about he's better, from outside the box than, on the penalty spot.
Yeah.
I do question if he's definitely going to be on penalties, because that's probably a bigger part of his value than taking free kicks, for example. So, yeah, it looks like a great price, and it looks like one maybe, if he takes a penalty, there's a double game week or a really good run of fixtures, and he's always a good player to go to if you're not sure what midfielder to go to. Although saying this, the midfielders look so strong this year. Will we ever find a spot?
And even in double game weeks, like I've owned him in double game weeks before when he was at Southampton, and I think it was it last year or the year before. I owned him for the double game where he did nothing, and then he scored two free kicks the week after. So he's that kind of a player, isn't he? He doesn't get in the box and stuff. It is to try and understand when his returns are going to come is so hard, isn't it?
I don't think it's predictable at all. I mean, obviously, it's always going to be a bit easier in the easier fixtures, but yeah, I don't think you can predict his hauls.
Yeah,
and I mean, I think his hauls are going to be a lot less if he's not on penalties.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So yeah, he's definitely one to monitor, but I don't really see him as that different to last year. Just we don't know about the penalties now.
Yeah.
On penalties, just looking at while you're talking. So Ward-Prowse has taken 24, scored 18, missed 6, which is a 75% conversion rate, which is basically bang on average, what you would expect, which is a good thing. You know, average there isn't bad. That's good. He's a fine penalty taker. Of course, aesthetics may come into it there as well. Southampton fans might tell you that when he misses, they're really bad.
When did he miss the penalties? Because I guess there could be a recency bias as well. Because he definitely missed one towards the end of last season.
He missed 2 in 22-23, both in the Premier League. So yeah, there's probably a good shout there that 2 of them. So 2 of his 6 misses came in the last season. So people are going to remember that.
Yeah, and I don't think Southampton fans
were in the Premier League for 2 years before that.
I don't think they're in the best of moods last season either. But it was just something I found quite interesting because I was browsing through their forums and I didn't expect he was getting quite a lot of hate actually for being on penalties. There was someone that played for them that had an amazing record, but only in penalty shootouts. Whose name escapes me. And obviously Southampton, it doesn't matter now. That's probably more
interesting to see if that carries across. Like I guess like goalkeeper coaches and coaches will have a thought on that. But just to complete that as well, just Ben Rama's taken 13, scored 13.
At least he's moved to West Ham now. At least he's moved to West Ham now, where the fans aren't temperamental at all. So it'd be fine. Rich, moving on to Brighton here. Estupiñán, March, Enciso and Mitoma, 4 of the Brighton lads, 3 of which have done incredibly well so far already this season, are on this overachievers one. Now, they've got a nice fixture this week, West Ham, and then it drops off quite dramatically. Are we going to see a lot of managers thinking, after the next week, actually, maybe I don't mind holding on to these Brighton lads? And if that's the case, do you think that's a good idea or not?
What, to hold on to them?
Potentially, yeah. So, like, if you're holding on to an Estupiñán or a Mitoma.
I think due to EO and recent form, as it were, I think a lot of people are going to be tempted to hold on to them. I mean, there's probably an argument with some of the teams I'm seeing at the moment that you could bench Estupiñán this week.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, a team like yours might be an example of that when we get to that, because you've got like 2 Chelsea defenders who are definitely going to play, for example.
Yeah.
Man United have an incredible fixture. Arsenal have an incredible fixture. So, yeah, I don't think they're essential. And the fact that, I mean, we don't know if Enciso's injured. Yeah. I think there was I think someone said it might have been cramp, but he went off. He obviously incredible performance there. Yeah, I think, but the fact that we don't have, again, to mention penalties, we don't have that decisive factor between like these 3 where, we haven't got the McAllister last year. We talked about it last week as well. I think that makes them a little bit less important than like Mbeumo, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be pretty set on if I had Mitoma, no other problems of moving him to Mbeumo because of the fixture turn. Not necessarily this week, although probably this week, but definitely, the week after.
And it's tough because I think I'm probably going to the wrong person now where I'm going to ask Seb, because that sounds bad, but you'll see why in a minute. Because a lot of people will be saying, yes, but they're overachieving and performing well because they've had 3 nice fixtures to start with. And if you're then going to try and keep them going into the harder fixtures, of course, they're not necessarily going to have that form. But is there that argument that Brighton play in such a specific way that actually fixtures maybe don't apply to them? And that's not me saying that is exactly what's going to happen, but what's your kind of take on it, Seb?
I mean, so if your question is, do fixtures apply to Brighton?
You know what I mean?
No, I don't mean that. Yeah, no, I don't mean that. Absolutely. I think obviously fixtures apply to everyone, but it's all relative. So you pick Haaland, you captain him basically against anyone. That's not because fixtures don't matter to City. It's just they're so very much better, right? Fixtures are a relative judge. I think that's why, the FDR on the official site Obviously, there's criticism over it's a bit too simplistic, and I've seen versions where they do relative versions to the strength of the team. But I do think it has to be, however complicated you make it, it does need to be an absolute value, because the only way to know how good a fixture is to know what it is in absolution, because then you can apply your own judgment to the team that are having this fixtures. For example, City playing Fulham at home, well, Fulham are the same team, but City are likely to beat them much more handily than, say, Crystal Palace, just because City are a much better team. But then we can bring that information to the argument anyway by saying, well, Haaland's better than Eze, for example. We know that, although Eze is very, very good. He's on the next table. So yeah, I think like Brighton could do fine in hard fixtures, but they are still harder fixtures. It's then for us to decide whether another player who plays for a worse team but has better fixtures is therefore a better pick in relative terms. And you did just mention there as well that will they continue overperforming, what have you? It's always important to mention this is 2 weeks. We're using this as a catalyst for conversation, and just to see whether we should be taking something from watching the match or taking something from looking at the numbers. We aren't saying Matoma's overperformed, therefore he's going to crash or whatever. I don't think there is a judgment you can take from this so far. It's 2 matches. Everyone who has scored has probably overperformed, because that's how that works.
Yeah.
But the one thing obviously worth noting is that whether you overperform or underperform really isn't relative to opposition, because the underlying numbers is what the overperform or underperformance is against. So you're going to get more chances against bad players, and therefore whether you underperform or overperform, it should still be relative to the chances you got. I guess the only case would be if they've got a terrible goalkeeper or an amazing goalkeeper. Maybe that's where something would be off. But then we're looking at, specifics that I don't think these numbers are built to handle.
Yeah, and I think it's really tricky with these Brighton lads, because we've seen them do it for quite a while now. That's the other difference as well. Like, we've seen them in this specific system with this specific manager doing well in easy fixtures and tough fixtures, like March, Matoma, Estupinan in particular. They're the 3 that, maybe most people own, have done really well for quite a while. And particularly March, he's got 3 goals in the first 2 games. And obviously there was a lot of chat about him being rotated and rotation would be hitting him hard, but they've obviously done quite well. Rich, which ones do you own, and when are you thinking of jumping off them?
So I've got, sorry, I was a bit muted there.
That's all right. Just a bit muted.
A little bit, fully muted.
Yeah.
So I've got Estupinan and João Pedro.
Yeah.
I'm struggling on actually both of these players. Estupinan, I think because I've got a bit of a weak bench, I'm going to be keeping him for a couple of weeks. But long term, there's going to become a decision where I think there's about 3 or 4 weeks where they have really tough fixtures. Then around about game week 9, game week 10, their fixtures become really, really good again.
Yeah.
So going to want him back. So it's just a case of if I sell and then buy him back, or I just hold on to him and bench him in tougher fixtures. And if I have to play him against tougher teams, it's probably not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So Estupinan, I'm sitting on the fence. I'm really not sure. I could honestly see it going any way there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pedro's an interesting one, and I think it depends on what formation. Personally, I'm going to play ongoing.
Yeah.
Because I do think 4-5-1 could be a very strong way to go. Looking at the future game weeks, I think we're going to want to buy Trippier, who I mentioned earlier. I think we're probably going to want to double up on the Newcastle defence, a bit like we did last season. Then you've still got lots of other good defenders around. So, but then there's also alternatives like Colton Morris, for example, Solanke.
Yeah.
Players like that, players that are nailed and are definitely on penalties, unlike a player we're going to mention, obviously probably in the next slides.
Yeah.
But I can see anything there, because I still think João Pedro could be the perfect first sub, even if he's not going to play every game.
Yeah, and I get the impression he's going to play the next game. That's the problem. Like, he's obviously had his bench, and next game he's probably going to play against West Ham. He's going to be so heavily sold because he got 0 points this week, but there's every chance he plays next game and he gets a penalty again, isn't there?
Yeah. I'm not as confident. I feel a bit like I felt with Gabriel last week, where I just feel like I don't know, so maybe I shouldn't be starting him, for example. Yeah. But I think the thing why I quite like him as a first sub is if he has to play because someone else doesn't. You've even in limited, he's going to start some games, but even in limited minutes, because he's got the penalties, he's worth more than a cameo from a player that doesn't have penalties.
Yeah. No,
and I mean, he's still only 5.5 million. Well, he's 5.6, but I assume he's going to drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, my answer is I actually don't know what I'll do with either. You can justify selling, justify keeping.
Yeah.
There are more than 15 good picks in the game, so it's our job to bring in the 15 best whenever we can, which means you're gonna drop a player that is either really good or has been doing really well, and that should, in theory, be a good move. So that applies to these Brighton players. And I think Rich said right, you don't transfer priority then comes into it. So just because you want another player, can you actually get there? Is it the most sensible move, even if they're the best pick in isolation? Is it the best pick for your team? So Rich said he might, sell one of them but keep another on the bench or what have you. I think it's fine to hold them going forward, but you may well be able to optimize your team. And I think therefore the question there is, have we learned anything new about Brighton since we picked them at the beginning of the season and we all said we'd sell them in game week 4? What do you think we have? Like maybe João Pedro's had a few more minutes, confirmed penalties, but then he was, didn't start this week, so you could swing that the other way if you wanted. But Estupiñán, people thought he was capable of goals and assists. He's got a couple. Cool. The fixtures turn harder. I don't think we've learned anything new that should really change our mind. So if you were planning on moving Brighton players out in game week 4, keep with it. Keep doing it. And if you were planning on holding them, that's also fine. See how your team looks, transfer priority wise, I think.
It's the price of those two as well. Like they're so kindly priced.
Yeah.
That's why I find it tricky. Even stuff like if I sold a Estupiñán, let's say he's gone up to 5.3, 5.4 by then, do I then want to buy him back, and have to cost myself 0.2 and I'll be using a transfer out and then a transfer back in? Is it better to try and just get them, on your bench as like a good sub?
Yeah.
I guess that all comes into what your plan is. And if you're going to upgrade Pedro, you're going to have to suck some money out of somewhere.
Well, see, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at my team and thinking, do I get, because I'm looking at that Trippier move as well. So at some point I'll be getting Trippier in and it's like, do I just do Estupiñán to Trippier, or I've got someone like Shaw there who isn't impressing me really at all. Do I just do that? Like keep Estupiñán, take Shaw out and bring Trippier in for him, because Estupiñán, like you said, there's always going to be after a week or 2 weeks a really nice fixture for him, and we've seen his heat maps; they're absolutely ridiculous. He's basically playing the Chillwell role, isn't he? So I think he's somebody that you could definitely keep hold of if you want to, and if you've already got him, 5.2, like you just said, he could be 5.5 in 2 weeks, like easily.
If it wasn't for game week 6, because they got Bournemouth at home in game week 6,
yeah, I know,
and holding a player for Bournemouth at home seemed very familiar. Yeah. After this week, but if you took that game out, they've got Newcastle, United, Villa away, they've got Liverpool, then City.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that game week 6 that worries me. And then if you've held them until then, you get to game week 10 and you've got Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United, Forest. It doesn't get much better than those 4. So yeah, I think it's just going to depend, what priorities you have that week. Because obviously Gabriel, for example, has caused a problem for a lot of people. So a bit like Seb, we've taken James, well, me and Seb, we had to remove James last week. People are going to have to move Gabriel this week. So it might get to the point where you just don't have a transfer to remove Estupiñán, and don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's not the worst hold at all. Speaking about a new player then, which a lot of people probably don't have, but maybe are now looking at, especially with the KDB injury, Seb. Julian Alvarez obviously played at the weekend. Haaland blanked. Julian Alvarez scored a lovely goal, but it was his only shot, which is something you obviously said to me before we started as well. 6.5 million. They're signing Doku, Count Dooku, however you say it. They're signing him, but obviously he's a winger. Whether that really affects Alvarez in the middle, we're not so sure. Foden had an absolute blinder as well and played very, very well for City at the weekend. Is Alvarez somebody that we can look at as a Pedro replacement? Because for me, there's only 3 players I would potentially move Pedro to. And that's Alvarez, Nicholas Jackson, who hasn't done anything yet in FPL, anything for Chelsea yet so far, and Wissa, who's had an incredible start to the season. Obviously Brentford have as well and has some nice fixtures moving forward too. Is Alvarez somebody we can look to, or would you say it should probably be one of the other ones or somebody else?
I think uncharacteristically, the answer to this one is quite short. It's a minutes problem. We know Julian Alvarez is good. Sure, he's overperformed here by about 1 goal involvement, but whatever. He took a lovely finish at the weekend from 1 shot, quite low XG, had a few chances created the week before. That's how it all adds up. Foden looked brilliant. Maybe it comes down to those 2. Are both in the team? Is just one of them in the team? If you can nail that, I think whoever you settle on is a great pick. But the question is, can you get the minutes right for the player you're considering? I think we need some more time on that. We probably need someone like Gleek to do a Twitter thread, if I'm honest.
The thing is, though, that's tough about City is obviously their fixtures get trickier from like game week 8 or 9, don't they? So it feels like if you want to jump on someone like an Alvarez or Foden, you need to do it now to kind of get the most out of them, if that makes sense. So you get those kind of 5-6 weeks.
Does it feel like, because they're a City player, does it always feel like that? A City player, I get to have a City player, another City player.
Oh yeah, big time.
When I mean, Mitoma outscored Foden this week. Now, not that's always going to happen.
Yeah.
But like, Foden and Alvarez haven't been the best picks so far in their positions. They've been good, but there are better available. For example, Mbeumo. Maybe there's just that bit of sexiness with like, it's a City player that I actually could get involved with. And of course, going forward, we do think a City player, if they have the minutes, probably does have a surer bet of return of points, other than say, a weaker team. But I think that's the thing. I think we get carried away with points and maybe forget about the minutes on them a little bit.
But then Pedro, we're talking about replacing him for Pedro. Like you said, he's averaging 60 minutes. Could we say that Alvarez is going to be around 60 minutes now?
With KDB out, it feels good, doesn't it? Depends where Foden plays. I guess a new winger in Doku coming in is more of a threat to Foden probably than Alvarez, but obviously with knock-ons, we'll see what that means for Alvarez. I guess then you're looking at the window of when you need this player for. So it's a nice little Pedro move, but for me, Pedro to Jackson is probably, if you've got that money, that's the one that's a bit more attractive, because shorter minutes, probably better fixtures.
But why is it more attractive though? Is it more attractive literally just because of the minutes? Because I still have that. And sorry, Rich, I will catch you in a minute. Me and Seb are just going at it here. But like Jackson, I'm looking, and I'm probably so involved in this because this is the move I'm going to make this week. I'm looking at Jackson and thinking, he really just hasn't done much yet. And Chelsea, yes, they have the lovely fixtures, but at what point are we getting worried that they're going to sign another striker? There's lots of question marks about Jackson. I know he's had some good numbers, and we're going to look at his numbers in a minute, but actually I saw one of his headers, and it was a 0.7 header, and it was nothing really. Like it shows how obviously stats are quite noisy to start the season.
I think, to be fair, there was a discussion on Twitter about that header, and I think it was probably with Opta stats, which is what we have here.
Yeah,
it probably was overcounted. Like headers are. Before XG, headers were one of those classic ones that people with the eye overvalued. Like you'd hear commentators often say like, how has he missed that, whatever. And, when then something like XG was brought in, which gave us, the context of thousands and thousands of headers to check how many were scored, it was surprisingly low because headers are very difficult. However, also what we often see is that the numbers themselves can overcount headers because it struggles sometimes to look at the fact of, say, the height of the ball or the jump. Or I think in this example, it was contrasted with Bruno Fernandes's header. And how Bruno was basically entirely clear. There was no one around him, so no pressure. Whereas Jackson had at least one player like directly on him, but he was closer to goal. Yeah. So there was a bit of a sort of consternation between those numbers there, and we weren't quite sure if they were right. But even that aside, Jackson's numbers are better or equal to Alvarez's here, and I think his minutes are more assured. So does it just come down to, in what you were saying there, Alvarez actually has returned a goal, whereas Jackson hasn't? And so is that swaying your thought on how you're interpreting their minutes and numbers so far, which, small sample, so take it however you want.
Arsenal penalty, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, someone we haven't even spoken about in Nketiah goes down in the box.
Lovely pick if you can get out of him when Jesus is back.
Yeah. Rich, before we move off this table, I want to ask you the exact same question. If you were moving off Pedro this week and you had the funds to be able to go up to Jackson, who would you pick? Would you pick Jackson? Would you pick Alvarez? Or would you pick Wissa or somebody else?
So we were talking before, and I did mention I was looking at Nketiah. One of the reasons I was happy spending all my money this week in defenders, because he's dived.
Yeah.
I really do think that going to like a back four or having rotating defenders could be the way to go here. So I'm actually quite cold on a few of the popular options. Like, Alvarez, for example, if we touch on him, you've known me a while. I'd always try and triple up or at least double up on Man City attackers.
Yeah.
But then I sat down a couple of seasons ago and looked at, I'd have someone like Sterling when he was in midfield for City, and he'd get, 16 points, then 1, then 16. And I worked out if I just gone for a nailed on player that costs less, that maybe takes penalties, for example, often it would be very, very similar. What they get, maybe even better than this player who gets benched a lot. So for that reason, I'm kind of not really fancying Alvarez. Jackson, I've got reservations about because I know his stats have been good, but he's not played that often, in the past. He was he at Villarreal previously?
Yeah.
He hasn't actually played that many games. A lot of his appearances were off the bench. I know you're trying to watch the penalty as well.
Saka's not taking it, by the way.
Oh, is he not?
It's Odegaard, yeah.
Oh, we got breaking news.
Actually.
Yeah, actually, it's Odegaard taking.
Oh, do you remember pre-season when we were looking at like Saka without penalties is nowhere near the player here he is with penalties.
Oh dear.
Unless you back him to
He's actually taking it as well.
No,
that'd be a really interesting thing to look at. I would very gently speculate that Saka is still good, but that really hurts him because was he like 0.5 XGI without penalties or something, which is good, but you know we can do better.
Interesting.
If that might be if it's with penalties, that would be really bad. I need to check that.
Yeah. So who would your pick be?
Honestly, I mean, I guess Nketiah, it would be one where you'd almost plant him on your bench, and then again you can rotate him in and out when needed, because Jesus will be back soon. I really like maybe just keeping Pedro though and using that as the same role.
Nice.
Or give it a couple of weeks, go for someone like Colton Morris. Honestly, I really don't like many of the strikers this year. I mean, even Watkins, who we'll talk about in a bit, I think he's lost a little bit.
Yeah.
After what happened yesterday.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
That's just my opinion, not like you and Seb's maybe.
Spoil it. You'll put it so much more succinctly than I will.
So yeah, I honestly, there's so many midfielders we like. I mean, we just saw Odegaard score a penalty. There's so many defenders we like and are going to like when the fixtures change.
Yeah.
I just don't really care about strikers this year.
No, fair enough.
Cheap.
Yeah.
Andy, let me give you. So last season, Martinelli, non-pen XG plus XA is 0.59, Odegaard 0.52, Saka 0.5. Just to verify where that comes from as well, we have Odegaard was 0.29 XG and Saka 0.32, so very similar, and Martinelli 0.3, so actually really similar, so those numbers are fine.
Yeah.
That's non-pen XG plus XA. So Martinelli just about clear, just at 0.6. Odegaard and Saka very similar. Saka had penalties. If you're now giving penalties to Odegaard, which obviously is a massive assumption on one thing, we've seen no comments from Arteta, but let's assume Odegaard now has penalties. I think he's comfortably a better pick than Saka.
There was
based on those numbers from last year.
There was no discussion either. It was literally Odegaard picked up the ball.
Fair. So I mean, please listen to other people's opinions, but in reactive there, Odegaard is better than Saka.
But you wouldn't waste a transfer doing Saka to Odegaard.
Oh, I'm not recommending that. But we're gonna have a wild card 8-9.
Exactly,
you just mentioned Brighton's fixtures come back and stuff. If I'm by 8 or 9, if we've seen another penalty, we've had comments from Arteta, Martinelli and Odegaard might be the way. Or
right.
Jesus.
Moving on to some underperformers now. So I'm not surprised to see who's top of this list. So these are the players that have put up good numbers but haven't actually returned yet, or haven't returned that much. So we've got Bruno Fernandes at the top, over 2 for XGI involvement so far this year. Mope next, he's always going to be there. Neto, Jackson is 4th on this list. Cunha, Enzo Fernandez, then Grosh, Cash, Eze and Rashford. Straight away, Rich, 2 Man United lads on there. Bruno at the top, 2.12 in terms of XGI involvement without a return. Rashford, 0.89, considerably less than Bruno. They obviously have Nottingham Forest at home coming up next. That is their next fixture. But a lot of people are looking at players like Mbeumo, Matoma, players that are returning quite regularly. Maddison, if he's going to be fit, but we're not sure whether he is yet. Should we be looking to move off players like Bruno and Rashford this week, based on the fact that actually they are some of the most underperforming players so far?
Definitely not. However, I've only got 2 Arsenal players, so now I am wondering if Rashford to Odegaard could be a thing. But that's just me thinking on the spot as we're talking, because I really don't like losing them unless it's for someone better.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm now wondering.
That's an amazing caveat, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, unless I can get someone better, I won't do it. But I agree. I will always do that. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, but no, because I've seen a lot of people looking to downgrade Rashford or Bruno to bring in Jackson, for example.
Yeah.
Instead of João Pedro. So I
don't
like
I totally hear you, by the way. I'm taking the mick. I just love the way you phrased that.
Yeah, but because I guess it depends on where you think Rashford and Bruno are. I guess I'm making the assumption that they're good. And that we're going to think they're going to get a lot of points against Forest. I mean, I think this backs it up. I mean, I know a lot of people are saying that Rashford needs to be playing on the left. He shouldn't be playing through the middle. But, I mean, the key thing is he's still playing. Whether or not it's his best role or not, it's an easy fixture. He's still a very talented player. I mean, strange things can happen. I mean, even if he's playing badly, you can get lucky, can't you? Like a ball can literally just hit you on the knee because you're in the middle. It flies in. He's scored. He's back in form.
Yeah.
So I think the key thing is they're both playing. Bruno's obviously putting up incredible numbers. Yeah, I'm happy with both.
It's really interesting. I've just brought it onto the next screen because we wanted to have a bit of a chat about Bruno and Rashford. And I've realised I've just kind of naturally made us talk about this. And actually, all the other players I wanted to talk about on the Underachievers, we've spoken about already, actually, with Jackson and people like that. So
we want to talk about Jackson more later.
Could I
just
one thing I wanted to shout on the unders then?
Yeah.
Eze is still on there. It's game week 1 and 2. That doesn't include 2 because he's playing right now.
Cool.
So he's still looking. If he puts anything up tonight, he'll still remain pretty high, you'd imagine.
Nice. Now, I wanted to talk about Bruno and Rashford because a lot of people are worried about them. A lot of people are worried about Manchester United. Obviously, we've just seen there, both Bruno and Rashford are putting up okay numbers. Bruno in particular has been one of the biggest underachievers so far this season after 2 games. Rashford kind of so as well. But for me as well, as a United fan, obviously, watching all the games and doing a lot of the kind of chats beforehand as well, it's interesting for me looking at, I was potentially going to be maybe downgrading one of these this week. I don't think I will do because it's Nottingham Forest at home and it's really hard to do that. But if I were to get rid of one of these players, it would be Rashford at the moment out of the 2 of them. So if I had to choose one of them, I would be keeping Bruno. The stats obviously are there. He's still on penalties. He's getting in and about everywhere. It looked like, especially after the first game, Mount took on a much more defensive role against Spurs and Bruno was able to get forward a lot more. I'm looking at Rashford and I really, really worry about Rashford playing in that 9 role. Like you just said, yes, he's playing and at least he is still there. So he only needs a little bit of luck and he can get you a return, even 2 returns. And we know he's able to do that as well. He's just not as effective as a player when he plays there. When he's playing on the left, he can run at players, he can do everything he wants to do, and he can cut in and take those shots, which is what he wants to do. But playing as a 9, it's just not working. Whereas Bruno, we're seeing him play in the positions we want him to see him play in, basically. He did go out on the wing for a little bit against Spurs, but then they changed it all around and he went back into the middle again. My worry with Rashford is I'm wondering what it is that has to happen for him to move out to the left. Whether it's Sancho playing in that false 9 role, whether it's Martial finally being fit for 90 minutes and it means Rashford goes on the left. But I think if you had to choose one of the 2, and I think a lot of people will be doing this after game week 3, they might only have 1 transfer to use. I think holding on to Bruno's fine, but I think Rashford is somebody you can look to lose. I mean, Seb, this is, again, with that caveat of, I'm not saying to get rid of him before the Nottingham Forest game because I don't think I will be. But the next week, I think it's fine to get rid of one of them. You're probably going to say to me again, look, it's only been 2 weeks. Look at last year. They started poor the first 2 weeks. Then Rashford went on a lovely run and he scored against Arsenal. He scored against Liverpool, I think it was. So, this could be just the same. But I think that was maybe different because he was playing on the left again.
Yeah, you'll have to tell me if there was a tactical change there, I guess. So I think keep both for Forest unless you have nothing to do and really think you can find some upside. If you can only keep one, either that next week or in the coming weeks, I think it's Bruno. We asked pre-season, right? Which one would we have if we could only have one? We all said Bruno. I think that's reasonable. We've got some numbers on screen here. The blue being this season, the orange being last season. Obviously, it's 2 weeks this season versus a whole seasons of data last year. So, for example, Bruno massively outperforming last year so far, both in terms of goal threat and assist threat. All it would take is 2 quiet weeks for that to come right back down. So just be aware of how sensitive that is to tiny, tiny changes. But if you wanted to extrapolate from it, you'd basically say they're both fine. Like, sure, they haven't converted. I guess irony is the wrong word, but these aren't in isolation. The fact that Rashford didn't finish a good chance, I think Bruno created it, right? So obviously Bruno's XA would be high and Rashford's XG would be high and they both wouldn't see a return for that because it was the same event. So they may well be closely connected. The one piece of conjecture I would put up is that in terms of like real football analysis, Rashford playing up front or on the left is massively important and a really, really interesting thing to scrutinize. In terms of FPL, does it matter if, for example, here, again, 2 weeks, but so far 2 weeks playing up front, he's returned basically the same XG per 90 as he did playing on the left last season, or combination of whatever positions last season on average. His XA is down a bit, right? He hasn't created anything, I think, here. So fair enough. You could argue if you wanted just from these numbers that his creativity's down. But if he's putting up basically the same goal threat, do I actually care if he's up front or on the left? Sure, Man United might be a lot worse. But if he individually is basically the same, I'm fine with that. The argument would be that if Man United tactically are better, Rashford could go beyond last season, fine, fair enough, and it's only 2 weeks. But for me, I think that just adds to the argument of I'm happy to chill out. I own both. I am not selling either this week unless, I don't know, something crazy happens to my team. Gabriel starts up front.
And you're under the same impression, Rich, that you've got no intention of selling either this week. If you're in a position, say, like me or quite a few managers where you've got 2 free transfers, you haven't got Mbeumo or Mitoma or whatever it is, you're under no impressions that you're like, no, I'm not going to be getting rid of either.
So that was my thought, and I think it will be my thought. But honestly, I'm still here thinking about this Odegaard thing now. And I know I'm in the unique position. However, because United and Arsenal play each other.
They do, yeah.
Next game week, and Arsenal are at home. So, but then I wouldn't know which one I'd sell out of Bruno
By
and
next,
Rashford.
you mean game week 4, by the way?
So yes, I mean game week 4.
Yeah.
So what I mean is they both got incredible home fixtures this week, where I'd almost see them as they're the same basically. Yeah. But then Arsenal do look better when we get to game week 4. Mm-hmm. So maybe then I would be looking to lose one, and I think it would be Rashford that I lose. But it feels like a coin flip, and it's a big reason I've got both. We did talk about it before. I literally couldn't really decide between them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost that indecision's kept them. They're both brilliant assets, but yeah, there is that part in my mind now thinking about getting an Odegaard. But we need to see. I need to see more of this game and actually watch it back properly and see what Arteta says.
Be interesting, yeah. If they interview Arteta afterwards and say, "Have you changed penalty takers now?" Because he might do what was it Ranić did with United, saying, "Nah, whoever wants to take it can take it," and it's like that's not what we want to hear. We want to hear that somebody's actually got them, don't we? But
someone, Steve in the chat said, "I don't think Saka wants pens." It wouldn't shock me that.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Maybe he just doesn't want the pressure of them. Obviously, this is pure speculation now.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get some comments after the game.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Because that does change quite a lot. But Saka's still a great asset on his own as well. It's giving me a headache.
It's interesting. It's interesting what Seb just said in terms of the data, and obviously this is only 2 weeks in. I do think it hurts Rashford as an asset if he's playing up top, personally. But obviously, these are 2 weeks where we haven't played incredibly well anyway. So, but I do think Bruno's the one to keep out of the two of them.
Do you know what? I did like the point Seb made about it might be, it's bad for Man United as a team, but not bad for him in FPL. Because I think that about a lot of players. Sorry to mention Robertson again, for example, but I was looking at what Liverpool fans were saying about him, and they hate him.
Yeah.
No, that's a bit far. A lot of them didn't want him to play because I guess when he's playing this, left centre back, he's bombing forward still, leaving them exposed, which is good for FPL. As an FPL manager,
it's like
don't
Alonso,
support Liverpool. Yeah, I don't care if if he gets forward and scores a goal and then lets in 3 at the other end.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. We had that with Alonso for years, didn't we? Chelsea fans were like, Alonso's rubbish. Like, why do you FPL fans love him so much? It's because he is a rubbish defender. He just gets forward.
Captaining him. Yeah,
exactly. Right, so moving on to Watkins now then. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not over-exaggerating this, am I, Seb? As soon as Watkins lost penalties, you were on Twitter saying, actually, this might not be the worst thing. We don't know. Let's have a look at the data.
With that tone as well, but actually,
I
think you'll find no.
And you messaged us going, right, lads, got to do something on Watkins. So just talk us through this, because it's interesting, because a lot of people have been saying for quite a while, he's not the best penalty taker, and it looks like he's off them. What does it mean for him as an asset? Because people are thinking, right, got to sell him straight away. Are they correct?
It's one of those like FPL jokes, isn't it? Where like he's bad at penalties, therefore, when he steps up, you're like, oh god, I wish he wasn't on it, because then I won't lose points. And he has taken in his career 9 penalties, and he's in his league career 9 penalties, and he's missed 5 and he's scored 4.
I should say very quickly, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah.
Red card for Arsenal.
Oh really? Who?
It's Tommy Asu. Carry on.
See, that's actually really interesting there for Gabriel.
A lot of red cards this.
Presumably,
this
Zinchenko comes on for Tomiyasu. Presumably, does that now mean they can invert from the left and Gabriel can play next week for centre back?
Second yellow.
There's
been so many yellows this week.
So he'll miss next week, but nothing else, right? That's weird. I'm absolutely fair enough to say there's a bit of ego here as well. I'm really interested to see if that speculative analysis, right, based on not enough data, but I'm really interested to see whether it's right or wrong. Whether it's right or wrong. If it's right, cool, it makes me feel nice. But if it's wrong, we still learn something, which is cool. No, but genuinely, if we're I think the point of something like that is not to be right or wrong. It's to test the theory and then see where it can take us. So I want to know if if there's anything in that idea that it's tactical or if there's other reasons Gabriel isn't playing. Because I've got him. I need to keep him.
Wonder if Gabriel's on his way back from the airport.
Yeah, to come
Anyway, people who listen to this probably know the answer, right? They're listening tomorrow, and we all sound ignorant now with what they've learned overnight. So, speaking of sounding ignorant, Watkins and penalties.
Yes.
So I did something on Twitter that I said I might do, just like, oh well, is it actually better or worse if he has penalties? The conjecture being that it's better, even though he misses more than he scores historically. It is better he has penalties because he gets more points for scoring them than he loses. Hello, yeah.
It's Gabriel coming on.
Oh, is he? Oh, cool, mate. That's great. 20 minutes for a bullet header from a corner. I'll take it. It's 1 point off the bench for Gusto, so I'm very happy to see Gabriel. So yeah, I've got here on the screen at the top. These are the rules. Please, as well, in the chat or in the comments, shout if I've got any of these wrong, because that's really important to this. Correct me, please. But for a goal, we obviously get 4 points, and we get 24 bonus point score. So for anyone who doesn't know, obviously we get 3 bonus at the end of a match for our players, but that isn't like an absolute value. It's the 3 highest scoring players in that match based on their bonus point score. So you obviously get points that contribute towards that during a match. Scoring a goal for a forward is worth 24 of those points, which I actually think is one of the highest amounts of points you can get. So pretty big. It's why I think we argue that like goal scorers maybe are sort of double counted in terms of how much they get rewarded, because they'll score the goal, and then if they've done nothing else in the match, they get loads of points for bonus points, which arguably should maybe be more about general play and not the thing they're already getting rewarded for. But anyway, tangent. If you miss a penalty, you lose 2 points in terms of just actual FPL points, and you always also lose 6 points towards your bonus point score. So you can already see how scoring a penalty there is so much more beneficial than missing one, right? You have to miss more than 2 penalties basically for scoring one to not be written off. You then get assists, 3 points. Obviously, a fantasy assist includes winning a penalty, and that's worth 9 bonus points towards the score as well. Shot off target is -1, and then I've put big chances missed there for -3. I assume that if you miss a penalty, it's just the -6 in terms of bonus point score. It's not added up with a big chance miss, because every penalty is obviously a big chance. Yeah. But just in case, I put it there in case I've got that wrong. So if we have a look at that for last season, Watkins took 2 penalties, I believe. He scored 1 and he missed 1. So he received 4 points for scoring, 24 bonus point score. Obviously missed a penalty, -2, and then -7 for missing the penalty because it was off target. It wasn't saved, I believe. He put it wide. So that would be -6 bonus point score plus a shot off target, which is -1. So for a total of -7. For winning a penalty, which he did do once as well, you get 3 points. But obviously, if he takes it and scores it, or misses it, obviously, he doesn't get those 3 points either way. So one of the big arguments here was, well, look, if he goes and wins a bunch of penalties, maybe that counts for him. Because he's not taking them, he always gets the 3 points if the scorer scores, and if they miss, well, he wasn't going to get the 3 points anyway if he took them. So maybe could it edge in his favour? Now, because something like winning penalties and even how many penalties a team are going to get is so variable over time, I've not gone and done what would happen last season, what would happen over his career. But last season, he would still be net positive, and you can go work this out. He would actually have to miss about 67%, and it's Chase who put this on Twitter for me. I said 50%, and he worked out that it was over 2/3. He would have to miss penalties for it to be better for him to be not taking penalties. So we can look at his career at the bottom here. Where, as mentioned, he's taken 9, missed 5, scored 4. He's also won 6 in that time. He will have taken a bunch of those, of course, and potentially missed them. And there's a few little caveats there as well. Obviously, the penalties missed, I've not worked out if they were on target or off target. So the bonus point score there could be variable. And then on the very bottom right there, you see the contribution towards bonus point score for winning those penalties. I've done 45, not 54, because let's say, people score 5 out of 6 penalties, which is actually a bit high. It should be about 4.7 out of every 6, I think. Very long story short, Watkins taking penalties is a good thing for him in FPL, even if it's only marginal, despite it maybe feeling like a bad thing. So him losing penalties is a very small dent to his potential as an FPL asset if he has indeed lost penalties going forwards.
Yeah, nice. And I think interesting.
That made sense.
No, it does actually, especially with how many he's won, where he wouldn't have obviously got those points because he was taking the penalties. I think that's really interesting, and obviously he did that.
That makes it closer than you'd think.
Yeah,
but it's just the fact that, and again, credit to Chase for this. Like, you'd have to miss like 67% of your penalties, and he's currently he's missed 5 out of 9, so it's a few, but it's not that many. It's also fair to say that 9 is a small sample, and if the average is 75% scored, that is, he would probably tend towards the average rather than further away from it over time, right? So if he took another 90 penalties, we might not expect him to miss 50. We might expect him to miss 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
Also, does it? I know this would be very small, but does it include if you score a penalty, you've got a chance at getting the winning goal bonus?
So I didn't put that on there because a bit like some of this, it started to get really like, well, just because he did in the past, is there any reason that penalty would be more or less likely to be a winning penalty in the future? And I thought, actually, this is cleaner without it, which you're absolutely right.
But again, it would weigh in the favour.
Of course it would. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the takeaway there is there is so very much noise here that you aren't going to get an ironclad answer. I think what we can do is look at the spread of points and say, look, he's got to be really bad at penalties, or he's got to win so many penalties. And he doesn't win so many. He's won 6 of the 9 that he's taken. So, he takes more than he wins for this to come out in favour of him not taking penalties.
Yeah. Interesting. So
I'm glad that backs it up, the amount we talk about penalties.
But Rich, we might see a few more games like this weekend where they win 4-0 and all he gets is an assist because he's won the penalty and that's it.
Yeah, could well happen. I mean, he's definitely gone down in value, but his price as well. Also, the early sub as well.
Yeah, didn't help. Interesting. Right, let's move on to over or under. This is obviously my section where I tell the lads, here's my players that we've all been talking about, and here is a projection for their points for the next 3 weeks. Are you going to go over or under those points? Then we kind of discuss them. A lot of these players we've spoken about already, but there are a few on here we haven't. So the first one is Bruno Fernandes. He has got Nottingham Forest at home, Arsenal away, and Brighton at home in the next 3. I've put him at 15.5 points. So are you going to go over or under 15.5 points for Nottingham Forest at home, Arsenal away, and Brighton at home? So, Rich, I'm going to come to you first. 15.5, you're going to go over or under, and why?
Just to check, because I've got the list in a different order. Bruno, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yes. Yeah, sorry. I keep missing him out. Yeah, no, it's Bruno first, yeah.
Got an agenda.
Right, yeah,
I've got
Bruno,
an agenda.
I've got over 15.5 over the next 3.
Interesting.
Can you say over, Rich?
Over. Yeah, I mean, obviously the money fixture is the game week 3 one, home to Forest. All it takes for him, we know what he does. He just needs a penalty, and he's going to easily hit it.
So he has to return against Forest basically. So like an assist and bonus against Forest is half of the score. So then he's probably looking a bit comfy.
Or just a penalty, and he's done it basically.
That's what I based mine on. I was like, if he doesn't get a penalty, I think I had him at 14. So I've gone under just massively based on the fact that he gets nothing against Arsenal and Brighton and doesn't get like double digits against Forest. So for a bit of spice, I've gone under.
He could take the penalty, miss it, and then score the rebound. That happens to premiums all the time.
Hold on, go back to the Watkins thing. Quick, we can work it out.
What about Nicholas Jackson next? So he has got Luton, Nottingham Forest, and then Bournemouth away. So obviously a lot of people are moving towards him. He's only 7 million. I've got his points projection as 16.5. So 16.5 for those next 3 fixtures. Luton at home, Forest at home, Bournemouth away. Seb, 16.5. You going over or under?
Super comfy over.
Oh, like it. Super comfy over. Rich?
See, I've gone under.
Oh, yes.
I've gone under. I know I was talking about him earlier, and then the penalty happened. But there's a few things that make me cautious with him. I think one thing is that he plays for Chelsea, and I mean not just because of what happened yesterday, but the fact that I think Chelsea want to build this, multi-billion-pound team.
Yeah,
I can't see how he's going to be the guy, as in the long term. That does worry me. Obviously, with the transfer window still open.
Yeah,
I mean the fact. I don't know a lot about him, as in, I didn't watch him play at Villarreal, but I do know that Bournemouth tried to sign him in January.
They did. He
then failed a medical. And I think part of the reason he failed the medical is because they wanted him earlier than March, because obviously they were in what they thought was a relegation battle. Mm-hmm. I just can't see him being the long-term option. But obviously I know the fixtures are good now. We don't think he's on penalties. I don't know. There's a lot of managers I really respect who've gone for him.
You score 1 goal in every fixture, do nothing else, and he gets 18 points. 6 times 3.
What, as in if he scores 1 goal?
Turns up, 2 points, scores a goal, 4 points, does nothing else. That's 6 points each week. 18 points.
Under.
Yes, I like it. Conviction, Rich. Right, next one is Julian Alvarez. Sheffield United away, Fulham at home, West Ham United away. I've put him as 14.5 points over these next 3 weeks. Rich, what do you fancy with Julian Alvarez?
I've got the over. A bit like Bruno, I can just see him in that. If he has one good game.
Seb?
I've gone over. I feel like all of my answers here contradict some of the things I've said in the podcast.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Don't listen to me. I mean, hey, hopefully that suggests the nuance of like, there's the reasoning for why we do things for our team, and then there's just the raw what points do you think someone will get. That doesn't necessarily mean you should bring them in because it's relative to team and situation. But I've gone over. Optimistically, he would have to play for all of it. But if you just extend the returns he's got so far over those fixtures with like relative difficulty, I think he can just scrape over. But this was probably the one I was closest on. So very happy to be wrong.
Yeah. Big one next. Salah. So obviously he only got 5 points at the weekend. He's got Newcastle away, then Aston Villa at home, and then Wolves away. Lots of managers out there are wondering what to do with Salah. I've put him as 17.5 points for the next 3 weeks. Some tricky fixtures in there. Seb, if we go to you first, 17.5, and could you just let us know if you were a Salah...
Havertz up front and Ketia off.
If you were a Salah owner, what would you be doing as well?
If I was a Salah owner, I'd be... Admittedly, I've not thought this through enough because I'm not a Salah owner, but I'm pretty sure I'd be holding. I'm not sure why I would sell. Would that be to...
Quite a few people are looking to sell, yeah.
So if I didn't have Haaland in the Salah team, surely I'm already comfy with that. If I did have Haaland, then where am I going? Is it, cheap mids are cheap mids. I don't need to sell Salah to do that. Yeah, I mean, I've not looked into it enough because I don't own him, but I don't think I'd be jumping off.
What about the points then? 17.5 over or under?
I've gone under, but only just 17.5 is a healthy enough total. And as with a lot of these other ones, right? Newcastle away, I think probably blank. And then it's how do you do against Villa and Wolves? Are Wolves actually decent or not is maybe the big question there, right? They've looked probably better than we expected, but they've also maybe played at least one team who was worse than we expected.
Cool. How dare you? Rich, 17.5 over.
Mate, the fact that you assumed who I was talking about there says everything.
I know.
I've just realised, I mean, it's another player we've got that little bit of uncertainty on penalties, and that could change the whole landscape. But, I mean, I've got Salah over 17.5.
Whoa.
It's Salah. And, I mean, I'd want a pretty good plan to sell him.
Yeah. So you'd be keeping him.
But it's probably easy me saying this when I don't own.
Yeah.
And there must be sacrifices people have made to get Salah. But I would hold for as long as I could, without it having a detriment on my team, if that makes sense.
I mean, us non-Salah owners are just livid that the United lads haven't done anything yet, because that was basically a trade-off, wasn't it?
Oh, no, that was the replay.
You're saying, yeah. I was just watching the same thing.
Anyway.
Interesting to see Gabriel come on, I guess. Basically, I've not watched enough now to know, but sort of basically the left back, I guess, doing the Tomiyasu's and not properly inverting, but, the sort of more limited left back role, keeping Zinchenko on the bench. Wonder if it's fitness or just because we want to keep Partey inverting is a really interesting thing to look at.
2 more, by the way. Pedro, West Ham at home, Newcastle at home, Man United away. I've got him as 10.5 points. So probably a goal, but who knows about the minutes. Rich, 10.5, you going over or under?
Okay, so I wasn't sure if you meant Pedro Porro at first. But 10.5 for Yao Pedro, yeah. I'm going to go over.
Yeah?
It's another one where it just takes a penalty. I know we keep mentioning penalties today.
Yeah.
But that's literally all it would take across the next 3. Obviously, I guess he's got to be on the pitch.
Interesting. Seb?
1 goal, 2 60s, 11 points, over.
Yeah.
That's not my prediction for points, just I think that's how easy it is to get 10.5.
Last one. Lots of people, by the way, said Saka's playing left back.
Yeah, he's at left back.
Yeah, and Saka
off penalties.
Again, so sorry for everyone listening to this tomorrow. This is just all irrelevant, but I'm very interested to see how they've shaped up after that red card and the sub one.
Yeah. Mbeumo's next. He's got Crystal Palace at home, Bournemouth at home, then Newcastle away. I've got him as 17.5 points. So Seb, 17.5.
Well, I mean,
he almost did that in one game this week.
Exactly. If he gets two penalties against Palace, 2 against Bournemouth, and 2 against Newcastle, that's about 4,000 points. So
that's
over.
How it works. Yeah.
Yeah, over.
You're going over. Rich?
Oh yeah.
This was the hardest one. I've gone under.
Oh, I like it.
He
Because-
still
hope I'm
has a
wrong.
really good non-pen XG, right?
And
He's got one
that's-
open play goal and he missed an absolute sitter.
I can see why non-owners are a little bit annoyed because it is unlucky to get 2 penalties in
Yeah,
two.
definitely.
And that goal was literally a tap-in.
Yeah, against 10 men as well.
When people were talking about open goals and stuff, that is an open goal.
It is
I'm glad he didn't
maximum
miss that
positive
one.
variance. Like in terms, we
Yeah.
often speak about it in the negative, but like you've picked Mbeumo for minutes and penalties and you've just got all of them given to you up front. It would be
This
very
is-
fair for him to do nothing for 5 weeks.
I feel like Visser's had some luck as well. As in, I mean, Leno gifted him that goal. I mean, to be fair, it's still a good finish, but Leno's just gifted him the ball. And the goal the other week against Spurs, wasn't it? That was deflected in. So I do feel like there's been a bit of luck for both Brentford assets.
Ah, interesting. Right, but yeah, no, I like it. I think Mbeumo is somebody that a lot of people are looking to get on because obviously he's got Crystal Palace at home and Bournemouth at home as well. So it's a big one that people are looking at. Right, let's have a look at our bus teams. We need to hurry this up now a little bit. So my bus team, I've got 2 transfers in the bank. I've got 1.5 million in the bank as well. I've got Pickford. Then I've got Chilwell, Saliba, Estupinan, Martinelli, Rashford, Mitoma, Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Haaland captain, and Pedro. Then I've got Colwill, Shaw, and Osula on the bench with Turner there as well. At one point, I was genuinely thinking I might bench boost this week with 2 transfers, so I could move Osula up to someone like Wissa. I could move Pedro up. I was thinking, do you know what? I could easily bench boost here with all those fixtures because I was thinking, look at, we've been told that potentially there's not going to be that many double game weeks coming up, as in at the end of the season. Am I going to get a better week than this, where the majority of my team is playing Nottingham Forest, Fulham, West Ham, and Luton? I think that's tough to maybe beat this as a bench boost later on in the season. The issue is obviously moving Osula up to Wissa and using money on a player that is going to be on my bench anyway. But I quite like the idea of it. I'm probably not going to go with it now, but I think I will most likely be doing Pedro to Alvarez or Jackson, and that'll be it. And then I'll be doing Rashford or Bruno to Mbeumo maybe next week, or Maddison, whoever that is. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with this. The team's absolutely fine. I don't see anything really wrong with the team apart from Pedro, who's going to be the player I'm moving up. Trying to get Colwill in though. I don't want to lose Saliba, and I don't want to lose Estupinan. So I'm struggling to get Colwill in. Yeah, that's the only thing really. Seb, Rich, anything to add?
I guess you could play Colwill over Pedro. I think that's your, or even Shaw. Yeah, your team's insane. This is actually a team where I'd probably bench Estupinan.
Oh, I just can't do that. I don't think I can do that.
It needs to be. It's gonna be bold.
Can't bench him over
to do it.
Colwill.
I mean, you can't bench Colwill or Shaw. You probably can bench Colwill actually. You can't bench Shaw at home to Forest.
But this is what I mean about the bench boost. If I move Osula to Wissa, Wissa's got a gorgeous fixture. Turner, you've just opened for save points, or you never know, that could be 0-0. But I don't think I'm going to get much closer to having a bench boost in a single game week that looks better than this.
No, I agree. The problem you've got...
Chat just saying it's a back 5 for Arsenal, by the way. So the 3 centre-backs, Gabriel left centre-back, and Saka basically left back here.
I wish I'd planned for game week 3 bench boost before the season, because you look at this. I mean, if you had a better backup goalkeeper, for example, then I'd really be looking at it. I'd really be trying to make it work.
If I had a better first choice goalkeeper.
I mean, yeah, I didn't want to slag off Pickford, but at least he's got a good fixture. Although, actually, Wolves don't look awful.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice opportunity to bench boost, but I still think you hold it. It's not like an absolute slam dunk, and I think that's what you need to not hold it for later in the season.
But
because
if I had Jackson and if I had Wissa,
but let's say that. So the argument against me saying don't use it this week is basically saying, there'll be a good double, and you might say, but like we discussed, I think it was last week or the week before, there might not actually be a great double for the bench boosts this year. Therefore, you should just use it in any week. But you've got 30 lots. Was it 35? 35 more weeks, obviously minus some of those doubles. So I don't know, call it 32 weeks or something. To find that slam dunk, you don't need to go at the first whiff of a possible bench boost. You will probably have another week where you have just as a bench boostable team, if not more.
But this could be the slam dunk wing. This could be it.
Isn't that the beauty? We don't know, right? We don't know. It wouldn't be a bad call, but I don't think either of us are saying you got to play it, right? You've got to make it work. So maybe there'll just be a sweeter opportunity. But if you go for it, and good luck, mate.
I think the benefits of getting it out of the way with are huge.
Yeah.
I just don't think you're close enough there. But it would make your wild card at the end of the season a lot easier.
It would. Big time. Just pick, yeah. But there you go. Anyway, Rich, moving on to your team. Talk us through it really quickly, Bird.
I can't. Have I got in this team? Have I got Estepina? Sorry, have I got João Pedro on the bench or first sub? I can't see it yet.
You've got him in the team.
I've got João Pedro in the team.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got Pickford in goal, Shaw, Chilwell, Estepinian. That's my back three. Then Bruno, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli, Mbeumo, João Pedro, and then the Haaland captain. I've got Robertson first sub, Rico Lewis second sub. I think my decision here, if I end up rolling, is do I play João Pedro, do I play Rico Lewis, or do I play Robertson?
Yeah.
So I'm going to play one of those three. If I do a transfer, it might be Rico Lewis to a Chelsea defender, and then I'd bench João Pedro. But I mean, to be honest, this game today, the Arsenal game's got my head wobbling a little bit. I am wondering. Yeah, I am wondering if there's something there with Odegaard.
You probably need a bit more information on that, don't you? Even if it's just an Arteta comment or I don't know,
yeah,
seeing if someone said something on the pitch, anything.
And
Odegaard
also,
and
actually,
Saka have just
Nketiah
gone off
could
as
be
well.
the one. I could do literally João Pedro to Nketiah. I could have, because I haven't got an Arsenal defender, which I'm regretting. Because I haven't got an Arsenal defender, I could have triple.
Me neither, mate.
Triple Arsenal attack against Fulham.
I think they're playing 7 at the back now. By the way, they just taken Saka and Odegaard off, and they brought on 2 defenders.
Yeah. Well, I hope they didn't play like that against Fulham, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Fulham, I mean, they haven't. Even Tim Ream's suspended now.
Yeah.
I think Tosin's going to. He's not been playing anyway, but he's going to Saudi Arabia. It looks like. Fulham look absolutely. Mitrovic is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there could be value in having triple Arsenal attack, and then Nketiah would become bench fodder.
Yeah.
Along with all my other players, it feels like, along with Rico Lewis, the graveyard of.
I think the problem is there. I think you get to a point when you end up having about like 2 million more than you need to on the bench, and wishing maybe you could have that in the team.
I mean, I'm quite pro early wild card, as in like game week 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Which
me too,
some people
but
might not say is early, but it's getting closer. To be fair,
I guess that does help you get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just feels like one of those. If you wanted Nketiah, you should have been doing it from the start when Jesus was injured, because I don't know how long Jesus is out for, but if it's another couple of weeks or so,
he's meant to be back in training soon.
United.
Yeah, imagine he plays next weekend. I mean, okay, he's not going to, but like the weekend after, get 1 week out of Nketiah and then you're benching him for like 4. That's a fair little chunk to have on your bench, and not just a chunk of money, right? It's a spot. It's one of your really usable squad spots.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 1 week only, but it's 1 week at home to Fulham.
I mean, yeah, if he goes and gets a hat trick, then it doesn't really matter, does it? Yeah, fair.
No. Yeah, it's just a thought anyway. I might well roll.
And he did get a brace against United last year as well. Just putting that out.
There you go. But I think long term, I'm going to be going for 4 at the back.
Yeah. Seb, moving on to your team, talk us through. Obviously, you've got a few issues there.
Sure. I mean, we discussed most of them.
Maybe not
during,
now.
So. Oh, well, yeah. Well, Gabriel in a back 7.
Yeah.
So Edison in goal. I have Chilwell. Gabriel starting here. Obviously, I've got Gusto on the bench. We'll see. That's probably my transfer, so I'll resolve that. Estupiñán starting. Rashford, Saka, Fernandes, Havertz, and Mbeumo, which is the same midfield I've had every week so far. João Pedro and Captain Haaland up front, with a bench of Turner, Gusto, Baldock, who is injured here at the moment, and Mbama. I have 1 transfer and 3 mil in the bank, so there's a very easy João Pedro to like whatever striker Jackson if I wanted. Obviously, could also get to Watkins if that was the thing we wanted, but I think he's now for later if you want him again. Gabriel might need to be the move, but there's obviously nothing immediately beneficial for the team there potentially, because I just play Gusto. What I'd actually kind of love to do, mostly because I'm probably going to lose value and therefore the ability to make the transfer on Gabriel very soon, is Gabriel to Trippier and João Pedro to Jackson. Because that would put me, and I have the money for that, would put me in a nice position for this week and weeks going forward, and I would be priced out of it if Gabriel dropped. But I'm not sure taking a -4 for that is a very sensible thing. So I'll probably just pick one of those things and move ahead with the team.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, looking at the community team, which I'm not going to lie, I hate looking at this every week because they just look so good all the time. But they've got Turner in goal, Chilwell, Gabriel, who obviously come on for a point, but it wasn't blocking anything. They needed the point. Estupiñán 11, Rashford 2, Mitoma 12, Martinelli, Saka, Maddison 3, which might be the issue they've got to deal with. Watkins and then Haaland captain. And they've also got James still. So they've got James and Maddison, who could both be injured. So they've also got Mbeumo and Gabriel on the bench. So they do have a few issues that have creeped into this team. They've got Gabriel still there, who's still, by the way, that might not mean that he's definitely going to play next week, because obviously if Zinchenko's come on and he's fit, maybe he's the one that plays instead. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Gabriel. So they do have a few mounting issues there that they've got to deal with, but they're doing well this week, and they're doing well this year so far. I think they've beaten all of us so far, but I don't think that's going to carry on. I think we're going to be wiping the floor with them very soon, lads, so don't you worry. Right, let's move on to a bit of a Q&A session. So we've got about 5 minutes. I reckon we can answer quite a few questions in 5 minutes. So anybody that's in the chat that wants a few questions answered, we will answer them as quickly as possible. These boys were not very good at quick-fire questions about a year ago. Now they are masters of the art. So we are going to be answering as many questions as possible, as quickly as possible. Fraser Love says, do I do Gabriel to Trippier, Seb?
No.
No? Oh, Havertz just got booked, sorry. Nobby says... yeah, he actually has, yeah. In the 94th minute. What about you, Rich? Do you think Gabriel to Trippier now?
I'll definitely get rid of Gabriel.
Yeah.
And I like Trippier. I just would rather wait a couple of weeks on Trippier. Obviously, they're at home to Liverpool, so it's not the worst. I'd rather have Trippier than Gabriel, so yes.
Yeah. Animation says, do I do Bruno Fernandes to Mbeumo this week? Rich?
No.
No? Seb?
No, step away.
Damien Brune says, Liverpool assets, do I go with Diaz or Jota? Seb?
I have a soft spot for Diaz, so I'm going to say Diaz, but it's pretty close, right? Jota's fighting. If Hakpo's a midfielder now, Jota's fighting with Darwin for the place. I think that's fine, but then all you need is one match where Hakpo plays false 9 and Jota's then out the team or on the left. I think Diaz is more comfy on the left in this shape, so just edge it Diaz.
Yeah. Rich?
I mean, I'd question why when it's one of the hardest fixtures.
Yeah.
There is, but Jota for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's just a personal bias. Yeah, I'd go for Jota. I think he's the XG monster out the two from memory.
Omar had a question. He's just deleted it, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it was to me. And he said, "Are you going to be going for Alvarez?" I am really torn between Alvarez and Jackson. It'll be one of the two. I've always had the mantra of don't pick players where you're looking at the team sheet every week and hoping they're there. And I just feel like that with Alvarez, but I'm fighting against it. I'm not sure whether to do it or not. Brad Northcott says, Bourbon or custard cream, Rich?
Custard cream.
What?
Seb?
Bourbon clear. So clear.
It's healthier.
Healthier. It's not.
If you're picking, yeah, even if it is,
one of them's
picking
got to be
between two
healthier.
biscuits based on health, then
They're
you're
smaller,
picking on the wrong reasons.
Last one. Frode says, and I'm going to add a little bit to his question here. If you were to wildcard this week, would you pick Odegaard or Saka, Rich?
You've added quite a bit to his question. It's too soon. It's too soon here. I would still go Saka.
Right.
When if you're wildcarding this week, isn't the easy answer just Saka and Odegaard?
But that's not what I've asked, Sebastian.
Yeah, it's also not what
Seb's
he
right
asked
there.
either. So
You'd have both.
Yeah, that's true. That's not what he asked. Yeah,
And not
Right.
Gabriel.
Lovely stuff. Thank you so much for all the people in the chat for your questions. Above average is in the chat. Great pod, by the way.
Custard
Says
creams.
custard
Clear.
creams. I always knew Adam was a wrong one.
And
I have a poker chip that's gone in the bin.
Yeah, I have about 6 stickers in my pocket as well. That's going to need some context, but we don't have time.
Did you get poker chips?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I got told because I've been on their pod 5 times now, and I got told I was being given a special poker chip for it, and then he was giving them out like Tic Tacs on the night. Terrible.
Oh.
I know. That's the worst I've ever felt.
Highlight
Right.
the night. To be fair. Actually, that's really harsh. It wasn't. That makes it sound like it was a terrible event. It was great.
Right, thank you so much for all the people in the chat. Really enjoyed you all being here and obviously your questions as well. Rich, thank you so much for being here again tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, my friend.
No, not really. Honestly, I was quite looking forward to I enjoyed doing this, but this Arsenal result, honestly, it's gone worse than I imagined. Like Arsenal clean sheet, Saka maybe off penalties.
Yeah.
I don't even own Gabriel, and I'm still upset.
Really interesting from just like a sort of, early FPL. Doesn't really matter how many points you get, which is obviously a silly thing, but that's how it feels. It's interesting from like an analysis point of view, right? Trying to work out what we do going forwards.
If all the penalty takers, oh sorry, Nandy, I know you're trying to.
No, it's fine, mate. It's fine.
But if all the penalty takers change, then the best team changes. If you see what I mean, as in like Saka might not be in the best team, Salah might not be in the best team.
We'll have to wait and
Imagine
see.
Haaland doesn't take a penalty.
That's all part of the fun. That's all part of the fun.
By this time next week, could all change. Right, Seb, I hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
I did, thank you, man. Yeah, I really did enjoy it. I guess like a bit less structured than usual, a bit more spontaneous chat, but I quite enjoyed that. I hope people listening enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you so much. Obviously, I enjoyed it. We will be seeing you again next week. There is a Monday game again next week, I believe, so we'll be there during that one. Rich, you might not be with us.
Yeah, I almost certainly won't be.
Cool.
Well, yeah, I'm doing an NFL.
I'm so sorry, custard creams. Custard creams. I'm so sorry, Rich. I didn't mean it.
That's right. That's right. But I'm sure you two will be fine without me.
Yeah, we'll be all right, mate. We'll be fine. Well, as long as we've got you back the next week.
It probably means I'm going to have a good game week for once.
That's usually what happens, actually. Yeah,
that's why I'm doing it.
Well, I hope we all end up with greens after being around 1.5 million. Right, thank you so much, like I said, for everybody for watching. We'll be here again next week, so make sure you tune in then. Please, please, please like the stream and tell everybody if you like the Scoutcast. Right, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.